We are in the Shephelah today. This is that area made of valleys in modern-day Israel that's between the Mediterranean coastal plain, known as the Mediterranean Sea, and the mountainous territory, which holds the major cities for Israel: Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron. And in this time, and maybe not today, but in their time, if you were a foreign power and you wanted to attack the Israelite people, you would want to do it right down the middle. You'd want to cut right in through the valley, the Shephelah, and take out the northern area of Bethlehem. And if you could get an army somehow in there, you'd cut off the forces of the Israelites, and you can make a pretty good stand, and you probably would win the day. And that is exactly what we're coming upon today. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Skosh in Judah. So they're going to be coming up from the Mediterranean Sea. And they're a coastal people. They came from Crete. And so they're going to try and go up and attack the northern part of Bethlehem. But the whole idea here is it's a very visible part of Israel. If you've been to Israel, I think the Shephelah is the most beautiful part of it. Lots of valleys that cut through, nice thick valleys. Many of them are dry beds throughout the year. And so this army is going to move up. Saul sees this, and so he moves his army down because he does not want them to get up into the mountains. He doesn't want to get anywhere near the Bethlehem or Jerusalem. So he assembles his armies, and they move down to the valley of Elah. And they drew up their battle lines between the two. So you have the Philistines on the southern side of this valley, and you have the Israelites to the northern side. And like I said, it's a valley, so you have the Israelites on this side, the Philistines on this side, and then this is what it looks like. It drops down. There's a dry creek bed. So if one army wanted to attack to another, they would have to come all the way down the hill, go across the flat plain, and go up the hill to attack the army. This is militarily suicide to do that. And so both armies are sort of in a standstill. They're trying to goad each other to come down the hill. And one of the best ways you can do that is talk smack. Right? Yell insults to try and get them to come down the hill. Because if they can say something profound enough about their mothers, their daughters, their sons, their gods, maybe they'll get angry and they'll rush and they'll come down that hill, and then they're just sitting ducks. They'll be able to take half of them out before they even get to the other side. And so you see that happening right now. Goliath is one of the Philistines' biggest goaders, literally and figuratively. He's yelling out these insults. He's really trying to get them out. And his name was Goliath, who was from Gath, and he came out of the Philistine camp, and he was over 9 feet tall. Back then, if you were 6'5", 6'9", 7'9", 8'9", that's a monster. And so at any rate, this says he was 9 feet tall, but he was a big feller, an imposing feller. And so he came out, and he had a bronze helmet, which made him all the bigger. One of the memories I remember most, the very first game I went to in Nebraska, a home game, at that time you could walk right near the edge of the end zone as you were walking through. And I saw these football players with all their gear on as like an 8-year-old. I remember looking up and going, I'm never going to play football. Like these guys are monsters, and they're not as big without their gear. But when they have their gear on, they're monsters. And he has all of his regalia on, all of this armor, all of this wonderful stuff. And so, just the armor, the scale weighed 125 pounds. I put some our measurements up there. And on his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back, and he had a spear with a 15-pound head on it. Just this massive feller. He obviously was a soldier, a foot soldier. So Goliath stood there, and he shouted out to the ranks of Israel, why do you come out? and line up for battle. Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. Even as early as the ancient Mesopotamian era, there was the honorable act of single hand-to-hand combat, meaning in order to spare a bloody battle and destroy probably farmers and also soldiers and engineers in this bloody war, someone early on said, why don't we just do this? I'll send my best, you send your best, and whatever happens, happens. And we'll just go with those results. And so he's calling out this ancient sort of practice of single combat to be able to figure all this out. And he says, if we fight and you kill me, then we become your subjects. But if I overcome you and kill your guy, well, you become our subjects and you must serve us. What's interesting about all of this, even though God had done so much in their lives and they're now in the promised land and they're coming out of the Judges era, when the Philistine said, this day I defy the ranks of Israel, give me a man and let him fight, right? Let's fight. That's a bit of an insult. Send me a man because I don't see any. If you have a man in that army, send him down and let us fight, right? But this was the reaction of Saul, the king, and all of the Israelites. I didn't come up with that word. They did. All of them were dismayed and terrified. Absolutely terrified by this thought. They were in a state of intense fear, folks. This is how the Hebrew, the Greek, how they draw this out in the original text. They were filled with fear and desperation. And this is absolutely the opposite of courage and faithfulness with the people of God. Now, if you have a bulletin, you can flip it around. I think the key verses are coming up. And this point is very important for us to understand, because I think this is why we even talk about Goliath today. It really isn't about what he did. In the end, it was superior technology over sort of a bumbling foe. But it has to do with our ability to have a relationship with God and trust him in the worst of times and the best of times. And we see here that the people of God had completely fallen off. They had lost their connection with God and their relationship with him completely. Now, Saul, who was the king at the time, had been chosen by God, but he had done so many wrong acts and said so much awful things that eventually God withdrew his support from him. And so Samuel, his chosen sort of mouthpiece, went and then he ordained David, this young teenage boy who primarily was a shepherd, and said, you will be the next king. And so as Saul was diminishing, losing his connection with God, David is now rising up. And this is where we sort of catch up with David. So Jesse, David's dad, had 3 older sons who followed Saul into war. Now Jesse said to his younger son, David, take some roasted grain and some loaves of bread, and he also gave him wheels of cheese too, and bring them to your brothers, and bring the cheese to the quartermaster of the camp. And go see how your brothers are doing, and bring back some assurances to me. Isn't that great to know? Parents will always be parents. Back then, today, just bring me back some assurance that things are okay. And so he sends David off to bring this food. See, David's been in the field tending the sheep, because what do you do with teenage boys to keep them out of trouble? You give them the lowest, safest job possible, right? That's still the same thing today. Boys today are the same as boys then. You put them in a place where they can have the opportunity to win. So right now he's in the field taking care of the sheep, and he's being sent into Saul's service back and forth. Now, the Israelites had been saying to each other, how is this going to stop? You know, the rumors start to spread, because this is the thing about fear. Fear unattended becomes a tyrant. You know, when we don't take care of our difficulties, when we ignore medical concerns, when we ignore people who are oppressing us or things are going, when we ignore those things, they become a tyrant and they start to control our lives. Well, everyone was in fear and despair, and they started having rumors, like, is this about to collapse? Are we about to fall? And David gets there and he's hearing all this stuff. They're talking to each other, and you can see how desperate Saul was. Do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king, now look at this laundry list of stuff. I'll do it for the last point, not the first two. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his father's family from taxes in Israel. I would do it for that last one alone. You can keep your money and your daughter. Just make it tax-free, and that it will shake right now. So you have this incredible, you see how desperate it is when the government says you don't have to pay taxes anymore? You know how desperate a government is when they make that offer? And so you have a complete collapse of relationship with God, a complete hollowing of faith and confidence and courage, just out the door here. And David's hearing this young teenage boy teenage boys already have enough confidence, right? And bravado, many of them, right? And so he's listening to this stuff. David then turned and asked multiple people, is this really what you're talking about? Is this really what's going to happen? No one here wants to go down there and stand up to him, even with this great offer? No one of you? None of you? He asked one after the other. None of you want to do this. Okay. People were hearing what David was saying. They kind of knew who he was and what God was doing in his life, and so they reported this to Saul, and Saul wanted to have a talk with the little boy. So David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and I'll fight him, right? I'll go fight this man. Saul replied, you're not able to go against him, right? You're not going to be able to fight him. You're only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth. You're a shepherd, though shepherds are incredible examples for all of us. Shepherds have to have the violent capacity to take on wild animals, but at the same time have a gentle touch to care for very innocent animals, right? It's this incredible compilation of what men should be. And so you have this all laid out. It's very interesting, isn't it? Let no one lose heart on account of the Philistines. I will go fight them. Well, this is what's happening. Why does he have this confidence? Well, he spent year after year after year in the field, taking care of the sheep, walking with God, watching what he was doing in his life. Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it and I struck it. I rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine, he's no different than they are. Will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. So what in the world is going on with David that the entire people of Israel, the army of Israel, the king of Israel, had lost? This is something very important. Very important. So this is where you wake up and we listen. We move from naivety to doubt to courage. And this is really the crux of it. These scriptures are the crux of this whole story. When you're young, you believe everything people tell you. If someone you trust tells you something, you believe it, right? We're going to Worlds of Fun today. Yay! Then you take them to the dentist, right? So you giggle because you all have done that, right? You get them excited, then you may not follow through. Over time, children are smart, and they realize that people lie, that people may even want to hurt you, that what they promise isn't always going to come true. And over time, from the naivety of a child, through all these interactions, we learn to doubt. We learn to doubt what people say. We learn to doubt what people are going to do. We doubt products and things, as seen on TV stuff. We learn to doubt. And we can almost get jaded or cynical about the world around us. And it takes courage at that point to trust that someone else is going to do what they say. It literally takes courage to say, okay, are you sure you're going to do this? And so you put your trust into someone or something else for it to happen, right? This is incredibly important because faith is about courage in the end. Courage to turn our life, our understanding about the world, our actions, right, our aim over to the Lord. There's a bit of courage there to even with humanity and the people around you to have the courage to say, Pastor John's going to do what he says he's going to do. Or whatever, my wife is going to do what she's going to do. It takes courage to do this. And that's where faith begins to be loaded in us. And that's where gratitude comes from, really, is when you take the courage to trust someone to do something and they do it, you feel gratitude, like you didn't betray me. And what's been happening to David in the field with the Lord all this time? He's been slowly working through the relationship, time after time after time, with the lion, with the bear, with all that has come into his life. The Lord has been with him, and he's conquered it, right? And if the sheep are gone, he hunts it down, and he deals with it, and he saves the sheep. So at this point in his life, time and time and time and time again, he's gotten courage to take that step because God has always been with him. And he remembers this, right? It's through that relationship that courage then forms. And I know, and Jesus knows, that this life can just break your heart, right? It could take the heart of us. There is desperation and pain and difficulty and grappling, whether it's someone at work that just wants to take you down, whether it's the loss of a loved one, whether it's physical health that's just dogging us, or not knowing anything anymore about where your direction is in life, to say, I just can't endure anymore, I just can't take it. We all have these difficult points in our life, and I do not take away from any of it. It's very real. But no, you are not alone. God is deeply involved in your life. And this story shows this. One of the great aspects of looking at David and Goliath of this, and this is something they teach you when you go through therapy training as well, is that if someone tells you the details of an event that just happened, so if something very violent and awful happened to someone, you do not want to start talking about the details of that event very soon. You want to just deal with the emotion and make sure they're physically well. And when you get into a support group, one of the healing factors of this is that you can hear other people tell their story, and then it allows you to sort of reach back into your experience and start dealing with those through other people's stories. And so when we read tales like David and Goliath and Noah and Moses in the Red Sea, we're able to see what happens when we trust God in difficult times and what he can do for us. So when we face that, when we're in the midst of it, we can have that hope. And Jesus says, I have told you all these wonderful things so that in me you may have shalom, peace in this world. In this world you will have trouble. You're going to have trouble. But take heart. I have overcome the world. I've got you. And I'm right there with you. For those who are in the midst of it, these words are the heart of it, right? And you see David confidently saying this to Saul, right? And so Saul finally says, you know what, go. Not going to talk you out of it. So go out there, do your thing. Whatever, I've said that to my kids too. Probably at the same tone throughout the life as well. Fine, go, do it, whatever. I'm worn out. Go knock yourself out, kid. Then Saul said, well, if I'm going to send you out there, I might as well put on some armor and stuff. And what a ridiculous request. I mean, I get it. I don't want to be embarrassed if you go out there and die. People are going to ask, why didn't you protect him, or at least try and talk him out of it? Here, try and put on my armor. And he puts it on and goes, I'm not proven in this stuff. I don't know how to wear this. I don't need any of this. And he's like, fine, okay, take all that junk off. Then he took his staff in his hand, he chose 5 stones. Now you remember there's a dry creek bed in the middle of this valley, and they're hard stones. You know those river rocks? These are hard mineral stones. So he grabs some stones, puts them in his pouch, in his shepherd's bag, and he heads out with his sling in his hand to approach the Philistines. Now, when the Philistine with the shield bearer in front of him kept coming closer to David, because obviously he's moving down, and you're starting to see closer and closer. This is not a man. This is a boy. He's not even wearing armor. He's coming at me, and he's like, what is this, right? He looked David over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome. Now, as a ruddy and handsome man, I get being, underappreciated by my looks. I'm like, when you look at me, it's like, oh, he's just a pretty face. But I have like strengths behind that too. So I get what David's going through there, and he despised him. Why? What is this? You're wasting my time. I asked for a man and you send this, right? Am I a dog? Have you ever seen dogs eat sticks? They go, and they break them in two. They just chomp them up and spit them out. Like, why are you sending me this, right? And then he cursed David by his gods. Oh, yeah, I don't know if I'd talk too much smack in front of him, but we'll find out what happens. This is when David turned around and said, okay, you're talking? Let me talk a little. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty and the God of the armies of Israel, to whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. Who's also listening, folks? Is it just Goliath? Who's listening? All the Philistines, right? He's yelling this out there. They're sitting there. They're charging. Multiple times, every one of our stories we've covered over the weeks, God has demonstrated who he is to the Egyptians, who he is to the world, now to the Philistines. They will know who he is, but also proving himself again to the Israelites that he is their God, right? So you see all this happening where God is witnessing to all the people around them. And before we get to the next part here, it's pretty amazing. So all those gathered here, David yells out, will know that it is not by spear or sword that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. So he tips his hand. It is, because every one of you is going to know who the Lord is. He is our Lord. Now, there are 3 types of soldiers. There are, in this time period, there's foot soldiers, light and heavy. There's cavalry, and there's artillery. And it's almost like rock, paper, scissors. One is a great attack to the other, right? And when it comes to a foot soldier, that's all you need is missiles raining down on you, right? Arrows raining down on you. And so artillery were the slings, where they would put this ball or this rock into a sling, and they would turn it and send it off. Well, as the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Now, this is very important. I'm going to come back to that. But the sling, and they've done these tests, which is pretty cool, could hurl a stone up to 100 miles an hour. Okay? Can you imagine a rock coming at you at 100 miles an hour? And it could hit something up to 200 meters away. That's 656 feet to you standard people. That's amazing. There's actually tales of slingers taking down birds in flight. And when you're a boy, bored out of your mind in the field, what are you doing? You're slinging and blowing things up, and yeah, you're doing what you're going to do. So he was very good at this, and now he's cutting down the distance. If it's accurate at 200 meters, he's closing the distance. And so the closer he gets, the more deadly and more accurate this is getting. So he's closing down the distance, and he reaches into his bag, takes out the stone. He may only be 50 meters away, not that far away at this point, and so that's just a kill shot right there. He's got him where he wants him. And he struck the Philistine right in the forehead. Do you know what the ballistic equivalent of this is? A 45 slug being shot at his head. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. Sorry, wrong way. And so David ran and stood over him. He took hold of I'll just say this, because there's kids in here, I guess. David took a trophy and raised it up. And when the Philistines saw that the hero was dead, they turned and ran. And as soon as they saw him running, this is where you pursue and you run them all down, because you can't really defend yourself because the armor's not really on your backside. And so as they're running away, they wipe out this army. They ransack the camp. They took over everything. David went home with his prize, and he also took the armor as a trophy. You know, as Jesus works in your life, faith begins to deepen, right? We develop courage to face this incredible journey that's in front of us, right? To follow. And then gratitude begins to fill in because of his love and charity. You know, with Jesus, we can face the challenges and fears required to live the great adventure he has planned for us. Yeah, you see it in David, and Goliath, but the real story is about what happened in the field, wasn't it? The everyday ordinary of David's life, where he learned to trust God, so when the time came, the courage was there. So I want to end on this. Words of Jesus. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. I've got you. Let's do this together. And we thank him for it. Amen.